Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting on October, boy, here we go. August 26th.
Let's get through the summer first. We'll move into fall.
We're not doing that. All right, so that was a good start. All right, the agenda tonight is, Bonnie's got actually quite a full agenda for us on the Finance Director's report. She had to go upstairs for a minute, so we'll do that second. We're going to talk about the budget process, including some of the calendar and assignments, and I assume you've seen some of the things I sent out, and I'll update some more and send them out after this meeting. And then we'll talk about the policies and procedures next step. It's really just setting up a meeting, I think, on September 26th. So, I'm not sure what all Bonnie has in here in terms of the copies of... All right, she's got the master one that she sent out. Let me get the calendar, the subset calendar, the FinCom calendar. The one in the packet from Bonnie is the overall, her overall planning one. I didn't do one of these for everybody, because I'm going to update it and do it again. I think I emailed this out to everybody, though, right?
Yeah.
And Marilyn, I know, I need to get you on things, so, there's another one down there. You can share those at least. And Marilyn, I'll send an updated one after the meeting. This is our working copy, and then I'll update one after the meeting.
Okay.
So, using Bonnie's calendar as kind of the guide, and last year's September through December calendar, I just updated this one.
Okay.
So some of the questions are, well, I mean, the hard ones we know, or the solid ones, I should say. On September 8th, Monday, September 8th, and September 22nd, we're going to do joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen and the school committee.
What are we discussing on the 8th?
The first one, that's going to be like a half-hour intro presentation into the process for this year, so it's kind of Bonnie setting the stage, I think, for what we're going to do. And then on the 22nd, it's going to be more budget priorities, but that first one's just a half hour, so that's a real short one. The 22nd is the budget priorities. So in between there, we'll have a meeting on the 16th, and I'm hoping to do the policies and procedures meeting before that, because that's how you guys usually did it before, right, Chris? You did it before the FinCom meeting, so we'll do that. And so then my question is, I'm not available on the 30th, I hope, I'm going to be away. So I was going to plan one on the 23rd, that's a Monday, Tuesday, I don't know if that's a problem for people to do that, if we do the Board of Selectmen, and then also do FinCom the next day.
I don't have an issue with it.
All right, well, let's just leave it there, and again, there may be some extra meetings in here like before. If we don't need some of these, obviously, we can always cancel them if we don't have an agenda, but I'd rather get them on the calendar. Hello, Fred, welcome.
Yeah.
I penciled one in here for Tuesday, September 2nd. At this point, I don't really think that we really need to have that. I don't have any major agenda items for that, so unless somebody else feels like there's some reason why we need to have one, that would be next Tuesday.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that one. We can just wait till the joint meeting? Okay.
You set those up. Do you have an extra one?
I don't, I'm sorry. Can you share? And then I'll send an updated one afterwards. And then similarly, so October, then we get into the budget reviews. So based on Bonnie's packet, she sends the instructions out to departments on October 1st and wants everything back on the 29th.
Do we have a planned deadline as far as getting those back, so that we have them preferably a week before we
Yeah,
meet
we've talked
for the
about that
all-day?
many times. We've talked about that many times. So yeah, we're definitely going to plan to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we're all in agreement on that one, Chris. And I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's
just-
a waste.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
what Chris is referring to is not all this, but before the big meeting in November, that we get the books, or whatever the media is that has all this information in it, that we have it a week ahead of time so people can look at it before the meetings.
Before we have to deal with it.
Right, so we actually have some questions and have more substantive discussion. So then in October, again, we've got FinCom meetings, and I've got penciled in there what's going on in terms of the warrants and the budgets and so on, as best we know it now. I do have a question for Bonnie there in terms of that 28th meeting. If the books go out on the 29th, I don't know if that means we can still vote things in or not. It doesn't really matter anyway, you can vote and do it after, at town meeting.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the meetings I have scheduled for October. In November, the first Tuesday is Election Day, and I think I remember last year Bonnie saying they really kind of recommend that we don't have meetings on Election Day night.
Right, yep.
And the next Tuesday is, the 11th is Veterans Day.
Right, sounds good.
So we don't have meetings those nights. So, and then the next Wednesday is special town meeting on the 12th. So the question is, if there's any reason for us to have a meeting before then, we'd have to do it on a non-Tuesday night. I don't know from your experience before, if you think that there's anything that comes up within those first 2 weeks right before that would really warrant that so much, or not?
Maybe a wait and see, I mean, see how things go and.
And if we
the
do it,
rest of this
we'll
month in
just
October, yeah.
wait until October and plan it if we
If
need
we
it?
have to,
Okay.
we'll figure out something.
All right, we'll leave it open then. I'll leave it not schedule anything then. That's good for me. And then, so the 12th and then the 15th is the Saturday all-day meeting planned. And then we'll have a meeting on the 18th to kind of do a debrief from that, I suppose, and whatever the next steps are. And then the next week is Thanksgiving. And then in December again, we've got a joint meeting there in the middle of December. And then a couple of FinCom meetings. And then we'll go from there after that, but.
Good.
Okay for everybody?
Looks good,
All right.
and we'll play it by ear for November.
In terms of early November, right, if we need something, we'll put it in, but otherwise we'll leave it not scheduled at this point. All right, I'll update that and I'll send that out to everybody after tonight or tomorrow. Thank you. And then, yeah, and then you've got Bonnie's.
That's right. I found a copy.
Everybody should have a copy, Bonnie. In her packet, she had her schedule in here. And do note that the special town meeting is on a Wednesday night this year. It's because, again, Monday is before Veterans Day, so they didn't want to, afraid people would be away. So it's Wednesday night, the 12th. It's not a typo when you see Wednesday, the 12th.
And there's nothing going on that Saturday? I remember last year, what was there, like a, whatever, something was going on.
Which Saturday?
The all-day session Saturday.
That was the first year we did it. We did, because it was the first week of December, and it was a Christmas bazaar, a holiday
Oh,
bazaar.
yeah, so I knew it was something
Right,
bizarre.
yeah, so that's why last year
We're
got,
doing it earlier this year.
right, like
Okay,
last year was
okay.
earlier, too. so.
So Bonnie's list that says Monday the 12th is...
It's
that-
Wednesday
that
the
is-
12th.
That is a typo.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that's
typo.
Wednesday, okay.
Yeah. That's correct. Okay. All right, the assignments, I've heard from several of you and talked to a couple of you coming in here. I think we've got it set up. So we're keeping the groupings the same as we did last year, but we're just shuffling the deck in terms of who's going to be talking to people, so we all get to talk to lots of different people and get to know more and have broader coverage. So again, I'll update this and send it around, but Chris is going to do what Alan did last year, which is the fire department, the rec department, council on aging, town clerk, and veteran services. Fred, if you could work with Steve maybe this time, if you don't mind, you're going to do highway, light and water, cemetery, historical commission, and library. That's actually a good grouping to get a flavor for some of the different, of course, you know a lot of these people anyway, because of the PMBC stuff, so.
Yeah,
But,
whatever.
right, okay, that'd be great. Alan's going to do your group from last year, Fred, the finance director, assessors, tax collector, treasurer, town administrator, and IT. I'll do the, actually, this must be from 2 years ago, because it has Peter on here, and you weren't around, so anyway.
No, he
It would have
was.
been 2 years.
Yeah,
then.
Yeah, it would have been 2 years ago, because last year,
He was assigned, but...
right, so we mixed them all up somehow. But anyway, I'll do that group, building department, and planning board, conservation and zoning, Board of Health, and then Paul and Peter, if that's okay, are going to do school department and police. So I think that'll be good, and we'll work through it, and again, I'll update that and send it out so everybody has it. All right. The other thing, before Bonnie comes back, is, and again, it's really not much of an item to spend a lot of time talking about, is just the policies and procedures. My intention is to set up the first meeting of this season, if you will, on September 16th. And we'll do it before here, and I got to send that email out then to all the other members. If anybody has suggestions on what they think should be addressed or discussed for the policies and procedures, please get that to me, because what we'll do, obviously, the first meeting, we'll go through what everybody thinks the hot topics are, what we need to discuss, and prioritize those and go from there, so.
Do we have existing ones?
Yeah, if you don't have that, let me make a note to myself to get that to you, Steve.
Do you have an example of something we should be thinking about?
When you say policies and procedures, you're talking about the
Financial policy.
finance guideline, finance policies and guidelines?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll send it to everybody, just so everybody has it. I mean, that's where we spell out, like, when we have the not free cash, what do we call it?
Was it, what do you?
No, the free cash at the end, we don't call it free cash anymore at the end of the year.
Oh,
Undesignated.
Undesignated fund balance, that's it. Just rolls off my tongue just like that. But there's a whole policy in there in terms of what we do with that, and how it gets allocated. It's very clear. And then there's policies in there on the debt, how you handle that. And so it's a very important document. And I think as we do that, we need to just keep enhancing it and probably adding to it and so on.
yes, the financial policies subcommittee is working on would be those sort of revisions to those policies, right?
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Yeah. So, but anybody is welcome to say, these are the
Yeah.
things you might want to look at or consider adding to it, or what we think the topics are.
Certainly, we have several members from here that's on that group,
Yeah, right.
and it's probably a good idea for them to hear from the rest of us who are not on that group, so
Yeah.
what we think is important. But it is vitally important that whatever policies, new policies, or any change to policies that this group recommends, that they come here
Yeah.
for approval
Right.
Right.
before they go to the selectmen and
Yeah.
get approval without our input.
Yeah.
Just because we have certain members on that committee doesn't mean that what they come up with is okay with the finance committee. We want to see it, hear it, and okay it.
Yeah, and I always thought, I don't know why we didn't involve the whole finance committee. I don't know when we decided to go with vice chair and chairman, and as far as, I don't know why we just didn't involve everybody, and we all kind of contributed in the whole process, but, so I guess, I mean,
It's an open meeting, so you're welcome to come.
so hopefully, this go around, we all get involved, and,
Yep, and I already talked to Stephen Bonney about making sure that, we start with the current set of processes that we have as they're written, and everything will be in Word with revisions noted, so everybody be very clear on exactly what's been changed and what hasn't, so,
There'd be in track changes?
Yep.
Yep.
yeah.
so, all right, so full transparency on this stuff, right?
Where can we look to see where the most current?
I'm going to send it out, I'll send it out after this.
All right, so we'll feed our comments. Are we going to discuss them as a team, or do you just want us to?
You
feed it
can, you can send them to
chair
me and copy
co-chair?
everybody, just so we have them, and then, but that's a good point. I can bring that up at the next meeting. Well, I guess we'll have met before then, but we can talk about, that'll be maybe a standing item on the agenda then, as we have meetings on that, to talk about that.
Okay.
Because you're right, it was kind of a black box in some respects before. I don't think it was
Yeah, it was.
intentional, but
Yeah.
it was, so.
It's better on that issue to bring those things up
Yeah.
here around the table as opposed to doing it by email, because that could be considered to be meeting-specific
Okay.
and violations of the
Meeting.
open
Okay,
meeting
even
law.
just suggestions on what to be discussed, okay, that's fair then,
Yeah, I agree with that.
okay.
And when would be a good
So-
idea to get these completed, our reviews? Or is it just a ongoing item?
Which reviews?
These policy reviews?
Oh, okay.
Well, that's actually an interesting point. So is this something that you change something, you say, okay, that's good, let's put it into effect and vote on it? Or do you do it all year long, and at the end of the year, you get somebody to approve it?
If I remember correctly, I think the last time it was done was like 2000, I don't know, it's been a while. It's been a while since they really revised them, so it's definitely not a yearly or, every couple of years. It seems like it's just kind of, and Steve and Bonnie mostly worked on it, so I think it's just kind of been floating along. I don't think anyone's really kept up to date with it, so.
All right, well, we'll see, my intention is we look at it, and we'll see what the items come up with, we'll set up an agenda for the year, basically, and if there's something we want to tackle, and say, okay, this is that we've updated this, everybody's happy with it, we'll go for approvals on that, and then just continue working, rather than, there's no reason to wait till May if we agree on some things.
The last
I like the idea of
revision
getting
on,
something done anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
last revision on finance management policy was October 21st, 2013. That was last year.
Yeah, right.
Less than a year ago.
Yep.
And that was approved by the Board of Selectmen, but I don't know what the change was. I
Right.
have no idea.
I think, well, it had a lot to do with the capital stabilization fund and that sort of stuff, some other minor things we took in and whatnot, but
but,
I think prior to
It was never
2013,
reviewed.
What-
yeah, I think it was like 2002 or something. It hadn't
No,
been.
it was
No, no, it's
2013.
Yeah, well, I know,
Right there.
that was when I was involved with Paul, and we met and did those revisions. But prior to that, I think it was years before that, I know. it
Yeah,
was-
I don't think it's that far back, but it was years before that. But the thing that struck me, and is same Fred said, was that that whatever revisions were made went from that policy group directly to the selectmen
I
for
hear you.
approval and never came here.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we do it here and it gets in the minutes and
The
everything
name of
else,
this
so we
is
have it.
financial
No,
policy.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, I think Paul would have the most insight on that, how that whole thing worked, because like I said, he ran the
Right.
whole thing last year, so.
I'm sure.
okay, we don't have Bonnie back yet. Can we do minutes? We have minutes to approve from last time, right?
Yeah, we have the meeting from the August 12th. There were only a couple of yours, and Fred made one comment that was,
Okay.
I don't remember what it was now.
That's okay.
It's August
Yeah,
12th?
I think it was the year. I think he made a reference on
That
the
was
year.
right.
Yes, I remember correctly.
So,
I missed the last meeting.
Yeah, and so did Steve.
we want to make a motion?
What meeting, what was the date on it?
12th.
August 12th. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 12th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, got that one done. Okay, so Bonnie's not back yet.
Issues with the copy here.
Song and dance?
Why?
What have we got in the packet that was maybe?
Stuck in the copy.
Yeah.
So we saw that Keith had sent out the free cash report. It got approved very, very early this year, which
Yeah.
obviously means they have their, not surprised.
I kind of wanted to ask, is with all those different bank accounts on, what the, what each one,
Right.
what it's, what sort of money was in it and how it was, the functionality of each one, so.
Looks back, we can talk to
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
right.
because there was just, it seemed like there was a lot of just personal banks, and I didn't know, what was going on.
I'm
I
sure
was
there's
just
a reason
curious.
for all of it, but
Yeah,
we
I was
have to
just
ask.
curious
Yep.
as to, what's going on in each account, so.
So what you've seen before is people just use one or two banks? They don't have a lot of banks?
Maybe 4 or 5, but we had like 10 or 12, or,
Right.
it was just, it seemed like there was a lot, but,
Yep.
so, and again, this is, of my 3 years going on 4, being on this committee, it's the first time I saw that detail on the cash account, so.
Okay.
So it's good information, and I'm just curious to see, what functionality each bank account has, so.
So we could look through these items, I guess it's on the special town meeting, to see if there's anything of particular interest we want to talk about when she's here. I know there was one thing Paul called out on, and I hadn't looked at it yet.
One thing that struck me, and I know I made a big deal out of it, and that is the requirement for the CPC
Yep,
to go back to the way we started and having a member from FinCom being on CPC. One problem that caused was the CPC meets on Tuesday nights. And many of their meeting nights that we meet, they're meeting.
Yeah,
And we had a member that therefore never attended a FinCom meeting ever, because he was always at a CPC
sure.
meeting. We need to deal with that. in
okay.
One
All right,
fashion or another.
yep, all right. So Marilyn says they meet the fourth
They only
fourth
meet
Tuesday.
the fourth Tuesday of the month, and they haven't met since May.
They're meeting tonight.
I know, but they hadn't met since May, because I take their minutes when I run.
yeah. Well, I remember they were hard to get a hold of with the issues with the annual
We
town-
remember.
Yeah, all the things that were on the articles there, and all the questions we had.
So, do you view that as an article thing, or is that's a policy and procedure
No,
thing, like who
this-
should be
this-
on there?
This is an article.
Okay,
It's in here.
Article 8,
and it has to do with the select, with
It's
the,
Article 10.
was it 10? Oh, okay, yep.
oh, look at that. Okay,
That's the change to that current policy.
okay.
which I was glad to see happen.
Yeah, it's got to happen. And I do think that will be part of the,
But I forget what
Policies and
the
procedures,
reason was. I thought Keith had some sort of explanation as to why
there was,
he didn't think that one of our members should be on the.
no, I think in the end, he was definitely saying there should be. There wasn't for a while, I think you guys said that there was somebody who used to be
Yeah.
on the FinCom that was on that, and so that
Keith-
was kind of the
Keith-
connection, right?
Keith disagreed with me that that's how it was originally set up.
Okay,
He said, well, it just happened to be one of your guys was appointed.
Okay.
But it didn't have to be by the bylaw.
I see.
And
I
he may
just-
be
yeah.
right about that,
Yeah.
but in any event, when we set it up, one of our members was a member, so.
yeah.
And he, Elliot was one of the selectmen's appointees.
Yeah, the next time they came up, they appointed him to the selectmen.
Right.
And then they pretended like he didn't belong to us, you know, so.
Yeah, right. Okay,
So that's good, I'm glad.
yeah.
I see in here, there's feasibility for the turf fields. I haven't been following that in the other boards.
didn't know that.
Is
Oh,
there a,
geez.
do we know, is there like a group that's behind them at this point or not?
You know, they came before us.
I know, but like, did
Oh,
the
the
school
afterwards?
committee or Park and Rec or somebody step up and say, we're championing this?
Not that I know of.
And they weren't
It
even,
came before PMBC.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that there was a feasibility study.
yeah, this is the first
But
I've
one
heard of
of,
it.
one of the things that we told them here was to go
Right,
to CPC,
Yeah.
and obviously they did. But is one of the departments stepped up? Apparently not, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
now that there's funding, they may very well.
well, 55,000 versus how many million were we talking?
Well, I know, but the initial funding is
Yeah,
there, so,
right.
for the
Right.
study, so they may
Right.
step in.
Right.
Because you know, and I know, that after we spend the 55,000, somehow it's gonna get done.
That's right.
Yeah, right, right.
I
Groundwork's
mean,
already been
if-
laid, right.
If history is
No pun
any
intended.
prelude to
Yeah,
the future, you know.
I'd be curious as to who's going to be managing the feasibility study. It should be PMBC.
Yeah, I would think so.
We haven't even heard about it yet. I mean, the feasibility
I thought he was
study.
gonna say he was interested in the contract. I'm like, well, that's gonna be an ethical violation. You can't get that
They
contract.
just came into, yeah.
Yeah, you might want to raise that in your other meeting, just so the guys see that on the radar.
Yeah, I already sent an email.
Okay, all right, thank you. So it should work, keep it all connected.
Oh, yeah.
I see we have a residency requirement now.
Yeah, I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know. I wonder how that came about.
You're
Who's that,
famous.
who's that,
The
who's that
Chris
directed?
article, huh?
Who's that directed towards, I wonder?
There she is.
Jeez.
Here she is.
Keep going.
We're still on up there.
I know.
Is there anything else we wanted to
We
get
were
into?
reviewing
I was
the
just-
town
I
warrant.
was gonna go, like I said, I hadn't gone through and read these, and I was curious about why the finance committee is called out separate from other boards, and I see there's one for the other boards too, so.
Yep,
That's
that's,
Article 12 and 13 seem like they contradict each other, don't they?
11 and 12?
Or 11 and 12? Yeah, 11 and 12 seem like they, right? Isn't that this, I mean, doesn't 12 cover the same thing as 11? I mean, but maybe I'm reading it wrong, I don't
I
know.
think 11, the town has has a finance committee bylaw specifically in the code.
Oh.
So 11 addresses the finance committee's bylaw,
Okay.
and then 12 addresses all other boards.
Oh,
so the 12 is really a new bylaw.
It'd be a new piece of,
It'll be a new bylaw.
yeah. By adding a new chapter 7, so.
And the requirement on finance committee includes other things that is not required.
Right.
in the others.
And I would just preface that this is a draft warrant. The selectmen just opened the warrant last week, or at their last meeting, so nothing has been inserted. This is
Okay,
just
this
a
is all just
compilation of
draft,
things
we
that
need to
have
make
been
sure we say that on
discussed.
television, because we can talk about these things, this is all just a draft, nothing's
Draft.
definitely in there yet, okay.
draft 1
All right.
is 17 to follow.
Okay,
Sure, yeah.
okay, good, thank you for mentioning that. We did get you an HDMI cable if you want one. Across, what is it, the fourth dimension or whatever there on the stage? There we went.
Oh, this one's not gonna work.
And out into the
No,
audience.
this one's not gonna work on this. I need the, there's a,
You need a different one for the Mac, right?
yeah,
All right, well-
Any Apple.
it's a
different.
special one.
For our-
Just go back to the paper.
Okay, I got paper. Did you have any other questions on the warrant, or did you want me to go through it, or I don't have time?
Well, is there anyone in particular you'd like us to pay particular attention on?
You're talking about the excluded debt stabilization fund
Okay, that is a suggestion that I had made
on the 6th.
in talking with Keith. We have, the town is allowed to create multiple stabilization funds, and we did one a few years ago for the capital stabilization. What we were thinking is where there's a lot of discussion about excluded debt, and, you know, if you run a project as excluded debt and then you don't necessarily raise it separately, you know, maybe there's a better process for showing that transparently. So I thought, well, if we created an excluded debt stabilization fund, you could, as part of your capital review every year, if there were funds that you wanted to put in there, to then mitigate either existing excluded debt or future excluded debt. So if you knew you were going to do a project in a few years that was earmarked to be a debt exclusion and you wanted to kind of hedge some of that cost away, you could park funding into it and then utilize it as you needed to.
What kind of a project would be included in that?
Fire station, library,
Capital programs?
Any large capital.
any large capital, anything that you would vote as a debt exclusion, which is typically building.
Because there's been, we had this whole discussion about whether fire station was the catalyst, whether it should be paid inside the levy or outside the levy with excluded debt. And then there were people who said, well, you know, there are some funds coming online that we could use, and there are others of us that are concerned about putting a big project like that totally under the, or
Under the levy?
under the levy. So this way, you could hedge it. When you have extra funds, you can stick it in there, and if the fire station cost $8 million, somewhere down the road, we could pay off the last 2, for instance, from that fund, and then save the taxpayers that money.
Wouldn't it just be like a 1-year sum of money? I mean,
I'll say you had like extra snow and ice money, that, you know, you've already done your capital plan. There's always capital items that you can pick out and do more.
Yeah.
But in some years, we've said, you know, we're going to throw snow and ice money into another account. You could take that and put it into the excluded debt stabilization and then use it later to help offset some of the costs of the fire
You know, if
station.
you make those decisions, then you have several options, whether it goes into OPEB or OPEB or what, or regular stabilization.
this
or-
wouldn't
or
apply for
just-
OPEB though, right? We'd only be able to put this toward debt.
We would, yeah, it would be used for projects that would be voted as a debt exclusion to offset that cost.
So if we had money in the capital stabilization fund, we couldn't apply that then to,
You absolutely could.
so why do we need something separate?
Exactly, that's what I'm
You
thinking.
don't.
Okay.
You don't. But it's the naming of it as such that I think makes it a little bit more
So
transparent.
you're not taking it out of the capital, which is for some,
Or you are taking it out of capital, but
But
you're
it's-
defining the purpose.
Perception is reality. If it's all in the capital funds,
yeah.
then we'll buy 4 more trucks this year than we really were going to. But if we take that money out of capital and say, this we're setting aside to help pay off debt in the future, then we
Okay,
get
so
this
that's
amount of
better,
money,
just-
that's what we spend in
Just
capital.
like having your Christmas club fund at the bank like they used to do in the old days,
Exactly.
right? Just so you
If
just
you
think of it
if you
differently.
name it to that,
Sorry, I think simply, right?
you're less likely
It's
to
the same
reach in
money.
and grab it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And that's exactly what it is.
Now,
That's like-
is there any difference between this fund and the other capital fund in terms of whether it's a reserve or certified as a reserve fund?
Well, this makes it a little bit easier for me to explain to the rating analysts that it's not a reserve. Don't count it towards my reserves, because right now, when they look at my reserves, they look at undesignated fund balance or free cash and stabilization funds. But by calling this an excluded debt stabilization fund, it's going to be clear, and we're going to define that this is not a reserve. So don't count it against me when we draw down from it. count these two buckets of money as my
We
reserves.
spend
It's
it,
true
they'll say we're
reserves.
drawing down our reserves.
Oh, that looks bad.
Excuse me, so does this mean we would vote on this as any other item, as like a
Yeah.
FinCom, to say,
Well-
we make a motion to put such monies into the excluded debt stabilization fund?
Any funds going in or out require a 2/3 vote of town meeting.
So this would be town meeting.
Yeah, but we would take a position on it because it has financial ramifications. So
Okay.
we would
Just go on
discuss
our
it
article
and
get
say,
through.
yes, we think it's a good idea, or, no, we don't think Bonnie's idea is a good idea.
Right.
The selectmen would do the same thing, probably, and say,
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
we support
Article
it.
6 creates this, but I mean, the mechanics of working it
Right,
through the year to year, once
Right.
it's created,
Right.
who determines?
So that is part of the budget process, basically, then?
Yeah.
Part
So
of
that
the
would be
budget.
part of town
Right.
meeting?
Financial policy.
Yeah,
So
town,
you run
town
those
meeting
policies.
determines,
Okay.
one, that we're gonna do this, and then every year they'll determine how much money we're gonna put into it, if any. And that comes from us deciding, we have an extra 300,000, we recommend that town meeting put that money into this.
Right.
And they'll say yes or no.
Okay,
And
because
that may be an adjunct to one of the sections of the financial policy, where we have this new stabilization fund, and these are the parameters by which, or how we would manage that fund. So that, to your earlier point, that might be something that
Right.
the group that is working on, or, the financial policy group could address.
I think once they voted to move it to the debt stabilization, now, whether it stays in the original debt stabilization or moves to now this excluded one, whether it's something we would determine, or now it sounds like something it
Well,
would be the town.
again, I would think that would be a ripe discussion for
Right.
initially the policy group, and then they should bring that back here, and we should discuss it and get comfortable or not comfortable with it.
Since it's
and
under the
selectmen.
umbrella of
Right.
stabilization.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's, a topic that would be ripe for discussion.
The timing of the fire station, the way it's laid out now, and I know nothing's official, but it's basically being done based on the timing of some of the high school and other debt coming off, is that correct? So it's not like we're expecting to have that debt coming off and we put this money away while we're waiting for the fire station, because the plan really is right now, those are together,
To dovetail it.
right?
Right.
So this would be something extra.
In addition to.
So not likely there's going to be a lot of money for that, the reality is, given that, right?
I mean, I don't want to say that there's a lot of money, it's just that you're looking at the capital as a whole.
Right.
You're looking at
Yeah.
all of the amounts as a whole.
Right.
And we'll go through that.
So that's the part of the other discussion that we've
Oh, we
started
could do
last
what we
time.
did last year and just cut some things off the capital plan and put it into stabilization. We could do the same thing with funding some of this debt exclusion. We could do the same thing, cut down the wish list to, whatever we feel is necessary, and then throw some money in the debt stabilization, so.
It makes it a little bit more transparent. In previous years, we have done this. With the track, it was a good example, and some of the Russell Street debt and the surface disposal system, the sewer tie-in for the fire station. Those were voted all as debt exclusions. And the track was funded entirely inside because we chose, out of the funding sources annually, to pay that inside the levy rather than push it outside. And we did that with some of the Russell Street debt and a small portion of it, and the sewer tie-in. And it's a great thing. I mean, it saved the resident here that push on their tax rate,
Right.
but it's not really apparent anywhere. It's in the financials, this will come.
Okay.
This is what you want to do.
And this is how it works, so.
So I guess that answers my question, whether it could be inside the levy or outside the levy, so either, however we choose to use that money, okay,
You could do it either way, right?
either way.
The way that this account is worded, it's excluded debt. So if it's money that was voted as a debt exclusion, you could use these funds to offset that cost.
And I mean, it seems like it'd be backwards now, but if for whatever reason, you know, you took out the loan, we did it outside the levy for whatever, and there was still some money in here, we kind of wanted to leave it because we weren't sure about something else that was coming, you can still do it down the road, you can still pay something off early using that money, right?
It's reviewed annually.
Okay.
So each year you say, okay, here's the debt service payment. Do you want to put all of it out? Do you want to take some of it
Okay,
out?
all right,
I mean,
so it's just full flexibility, it just gives you more transparency, interesting. Okay,
Are other towns obviously using this? I mean, where did this,
I wasn't able to find one.
Who came up with it?
Keith and I were just trying to figure out how to get debt service payments addressed, you know,
Okay.
and get the exclusion vote, but be able to have the flexibility to pull it inside
Mm.
and have it be above board. And this was the best, you know.
interesting.
Now, a lot of communities have multiple stabilization funds, and they may well be doing the same thing, they're just not calling it a debt exclusion stabilization.
Right,
you know.
right. Yeah.
okay.
Let's see. The Article 7 is, again, it's a, one that I just kind of hasn't talked to the CPC committee on, but there's a turf group that's, you've been here before. So they're kind of progressing through the process now. They have met with the planning board and discussed the $100,000 that the planning board had secured for active recreation for 15 Great Road. And they seem initially supportive of, you know, that this $55,000 that they need to do a feasibility study for this turf field conversion. And then in kind of going through that, it's like, well, maybe if you put this money into the CPC funds to get the 25 to 50%
Get it matched
match,
or whatever, right.
you know, so now you get another 25 to, you know, $50,000 for CPC uses. So it's we're trying to dovetail those together. So what we do is have an article to put the 100,000 into CPC funds, and then a subsequent article to take out 55,000 for this turf field feasibility study. The town of Norwell just did a feasibility study converting regular fields to turf fields, and it was funded by CPC, so it is an allowed use.
Yeah, right, well, it's definitely a recreational use, right?
You could still earmark the remaining 45,000 within that undesignated CPC fund as active recreation. There's a mechanic, you know, to do that. But, you know, there's more policy decisions.
Now, I wonder, is CPC gonna have some funds, I assume, spring town meeting? The annual, for potentially getting this funded for next year? I mean,
You know, that's.
are they, what are they allowed to contribute towards it if they do decide to move forward with building the tracks, the tracks, the
CPC right now is
fields?
having their policy discussions on what are their goals overall. You know, some communities, their goal is to spend the CPC funds every year. Whatever they get in, they feel like they need to spend it. There are other communities that have long-term goals that say, you know, in 10 years, we want to have another 50 acres of whatever. And in order to do that, we need to save money to, you know, get to that point. So they're trying to get a group together that would, you know, include members of the planning board, members of conservation, members of, you know, other communities to get those bigger goals out there. And then we can craft the financial policies that are needed to meet them. So they're in the very early stages of that, but while I was up there, they did mention that they're anxiously looking to meet with FinCom to get some guidance too, so I think that they'll be reaching out.
Very good.
May I ask a little bit different twist on this? There was an individual that came in and that briefed the idea of turf fields. I viewed him as an individual coming and sharing with us a vision. Now, I'm trying to figure out who's actually sponsoring this. I mean, you talk about CPC kicking in money halfway. I'm sure this individual didn't have $50,000 or $25,000. He must be
Well, that-
teaming up with somebody.
Yeah, that's what we asked, and we sent them back basically
Yeah.
to the departments, you know, whether it's Park and Rec or the schools
So,
or whoever, to find a sponsor.
Right.
So I don't know, to your point, I haven't heard who the sponsor is either. I don't-
so right now, it looks to me like CPC, or the CP is coming forward asking for
No.
a turf field.
No. It's, right now, it's a grassroots movement. The group is made up of parents and like the presidents of the youth league associations, so soccer, football, lacrosse, all of the youth league associations, with the support of the athletic director at the high school, and other,
Wow.
So is the high school asking for this now?
no, they
No,
are
school
specifically
department
not.
hasn't jumped on
We've
board
seen
either.
this movie before, and the athletic director got smacked for supporting the track initially. So, you know, we've seen this movie before, so I don't know how that's gonna play out when the school committee and the administration. sort of
Well,
kick-
as
kick
soon
into
as
that.
apparent that there's going to be money forthcoming, they will embrace it, as they did the last time.
Well, yeah.
They weren't for it until it was paid for, and then they embraced it.
That's true.
But still, 50,000 versus
But
the
they wouldn't
total
sponsor
cost,
it. They
it's gonna
wouldn't
have,
sponsor
gonna
it.
have to be some, I just.
But I'm with you, I think we should push for, you know, who is sponsoring
Right.
this, what town department is sponsoring. If it's, like you say, a grassroots group that's gonna bring it up.
Then we need a name of that particular citizens group.
Yeah, I don't know if the CPC guidelines in this respect, but does there have to be a town entity
Get
that
some-
comes
some of the
before
churches,
CPC
remember
asking
that?
for something, or can it be
Well,
just?
the group can go,
Yeah,
and
I
they
know,
are
but
gonna put in an application.
they're not a town entity, I'm saying, so.
Oh, Congregational church.
Church,
does.
right, I
Oh,
remember those
no.
churches last
What
year,
would
got some stuff
happen
right.
is if they approach the CPC and put in an application and it were deemed eligible and they supported it,
Okay.
then the project would then go to town meeting and be, if approved, be assigned to PMBC, which is a town entity.
Okay, so it doesn't require a town entity to be behind them. There could be a grassroots group, they have standing at CPC just like anybody else, right?
So, how, Steve, I mean, you're on PMBC, how did the, I guess the congregational church Windows updates, is that being handled by the CPC, or, excuse me, the PMBC? Or, so you guys are even involved at all?
Because
So,
it's not a
so
town
that
asset.
seems counter to,
It's not a town asset. PMBC would be involved in this because
so
it's a town
town,
asset.
okay, so, yeah, town tax money was going to a non-town asset.
Absolutely.
And I think all the church did was just fill out an application, right? That's all you gotta do, just fill out an application and go from there.
Okay. But that is the kind of thing that should be in the CPC policies. I mean, there
Right.
should be, it should be some bounds.
As I said, they're looking to come to you for some guidance on the policies too. They know they need to get their larger goals firmed up that they want to set up in the term.
So is the turf group a formalized
I don't think so,
group
right?
at
It's
this
just
point, or are they just kind of,
No, they're pretty fun. I mean, it's regular. I've been to like 2 meetings because they asked me to go and kind of walk them
do they have
through.
a chairman and co-chairman, and they're not?
Because they're not a town entity, but it's the same, it's the presidents of each of these.
But,
But at some point, do they have to be a
yeah,
501c3 or something? Well, who does the 55,000 go to? To the company that does it, and these guys just do it?
PMBC, to whatever company PMBC chose to do the feasibility study.
We could send out an RFP.
Interesting.
Who came up
It
with
seems way too loose for that kind of
55,000?
money to me.
Must have
Mike
been-
Corey is the one who's the most involved.
He's the one who came, right?
Right,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And,
And
he must have went out and got a quote or whatever, or.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. It's great that people, put their effort and so on in to do it. I'm not dissing anything that's going on. It's just the amount of money somehow, and sometimes the way that it gets spent. So it still seems to me it's remarkable, but.
I was just more concerned about individual steps forward.
Right.
And how do we use good discipline
Right.
in terms of following through.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
which is
because
also.
it's a town asset, it would be assigned to PMBC to oversee the project from the entire.
okay, so it's a town asset. What group within the town manages that asset?
It's a school
That-
department asset.
Who?
It's a school
The
department.
school department. Okay, so if the school department is going
Right.
to end up with the asset,
Right,
do
right.
they want it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same thing as the track. They've said, we can't, we're not advocating for any maintenance or anything like that, but if you want to go ahead and proceed, and make the request, we'll support it.
But there is a maintenance tail to this, and a sustainment, and
There's always-
supporting equipments and
Well,
other
the
investments.
fees that are gonna come out of that, I mean, there's potentially enough money, revenue they could collect to probably pay down the debt for this thing. We could make a debt exclusion, set up a revolving fund or enterprise, or whatever you wanna call it, and use that money that's collected to pay down the debt. I mean, that's how much money these fields will generate, but, again, huh?
I don't know if it's that much, but I don't know, that would be part of the presentation.
Yeah,
It's,
right.
Somebody's got to get the numbers and put it out there.
You don't pay anything to go to the soccer games.
You pay for football games and everything,
Well,
you know?
that's the only one you do pay for.
Well,
The youth
now they,
associations pay a fee to use those fields.
right,
And that's
right,
for the.
Yeah.
right, that's where they
So
collect
you could
most
use
of
the
them.
fields longer, you could have more groups in, that's the
Yeah,
theory.
you bring outside tournaments in that are gonna use these fields, and it's huge money, huge revenue generator.
So that's that one.
Okay, good.
What else do we have?
Interesting conversations to come.
Yes.
Let's see, the Article 4 is just changing some income limits for the property tax deferral program for seniors. We don't have a lot of participation in this, we have like almost no participation in this, but they wanted to make it easier if the seniors did want to participate. So again, we're allowed to increase the income limit, and that's what the Council on Aging.
You say we don't have much participation? I thought that we had a lot of people that did that.
Not for the deferral program.
Oh, that's different
Yeah.
than the earning, the one where you earn it? Is that-
Well, in the deferral program, the taxes don't go away, they're not forgiven.
I
they're
see, just wait
deferred.
till later. I
So
see.
there's a lot of reluctance on, a
Sure.
lot of the seniors, they don't want
Right.
to have that build up, it doesn't make them feel comfortable, so.
Yeah,
um,
okay.
But we're trying to make it easier if they do want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Article 5 is just an increase to the personal exemption amounts. I think this targets more of the people in need than maybe Article 4 does. The personal exemptions vary depending on what type. Some of them are, $150 a year. Some of them are $700 a year. But you can increase them beyond what the statute says, and currently we increase them by 20%. We're looking to go to 50%, which is an impact of about $9,000 annually. So would come out of the overlay account.
Where is this, exemptions for whom? For, under what, oh, this is the elderly again,
Veterans,
okay.
blind,
Disabled,
blind
veterans, blind.
Okay. So this is on their state income taxes?
No, on their property taxes.
Property tax, you give them special exemptions, okay.
Right, so it's just a direct reduction of their taxes. So it's targeting really the group in need. I looked around and there's a lot of communities at 100%, so we're going to monitor this and we'll probably low it 20, but we've been there for about 20 years.
Yeah, a lot of the wealthier towns are probably 100%, right? Yeah.
But the elderly is just based on age, there's no need or anything there, it's just based on age.
Well, it's called,
There is a need
There is?
requirement too.
There is a need also, okay.
Yeah, you meet the first hurdle, but there's a need hurdle too.
Okay. Cool.
but again, if everybody in it, got the full 50%, it'd be another $9,000, so it's.
Oh, okay.
I would jump on that at 50%, there was no need.
Okay.
It'd be another $9,000 from what? Like, what was this
In my
year's?
case,
or-
it would be $9,000.
We'd spend an additional $9,000 over what we
So-
spent this year.
But how do you know that more people wouldn't all of a sudden start applying for this?
They still need to qualify. It's the same need level. It's just the exemption amount would go.
So you know what the need level would be without even changing?
We
these-
know the participations now,
Okay.
and it doesn't change the qualifications. It just
Right.
changes the amount of the award for the abatement of taxes. So if we take everybody that's applying for it now and we increase it by, from 20% to 50%, it's another $9,000.
So that's not, okay, fine.
Let's see.
And the motivation, I'm just curious, so who starts that we ought to do this change? Where does that motivation come from?
Council on Aging.
Okay, they say this is standard procedures, what other towns do?
No, I think that they're trying to identify a way to address some of the needs that they're having, like with Tina's outreach work.
Mhm.
And, there's just, there are people in need. and-
Okay,
Trying to keep people in their homes
Yeah.
as opposed to.
sure.
It's a great program for people out there that are
think
struggling
it's
to
a good
get by.
idea.
Let's see, what else do we have that's different? Oh, Article 9 is the revolving fund for the dog bylaw enforcement. We've entered into a memorandum of agreement with Boxborough for their dog officer services. It's actually a great deal. It's $12,000 a year, which Westford provided us with a proposal that was like $30,000 a year. I mean, like, you gotta be kidding me. We know the dog officers there, the police department is satisfied with them. The fees from the enforcement of the licensing go into a revolving account, and then they go out and pay for this. We think actually the fees will go up because we're actually doing enforcement now,
Right.
where we don't do enforcement. I mean, the licensing fees come in, and it's not like Diane's going out there and checking, you know, who
Well-
has dogs in the neighborhood and.
Should we be saying that on camera? I mean, I guess someone will be going down and register my dog tomorrow.
It's gotta be changed. So having the
Okay.
dog officer, you know, around, we think will radically,
Yeah, it
change
should,
the
you would think,
enforcement.
right.
It makes it, you know, more responsive when there are calls. You know, the police department doesn't have to divert.
Yeah, it takes away resources from them, right.
So it'll be self-sustainable with the fees that we're collecting currently, and we're hoping that, you know, we'll recognize some more revenue from that. So we did have to increase the expenditure amount annually to do this. Typically, what I do at the end of the year is I just close, whatever we got, I close it to the general fund, because
It's nothing.
I mean, it's not that much money, so I just close it out annually. So I won't at this point, we'll just keep it here and pay the dog officer for it. And let's see. Article 10, it would be changing the Community Preservation Committee to have one member of the Finance Committee as a designated by said committee and within the bylaw, so that we have more representation on that.
We just need to figure out the meeting schedule.
Because they were meeting on Tuesday night, so we have to work
We
that
don't want
out.
to lose a member or, you know, whatever might happen.
Yep.
Let's see.
This will follow. Meetings be much shorter.
Article 13, and let's see, 13 is road acceptances. We're in the planning for a new estate in Nagog Hill, and Jimmy Clyde went back to like 1846 and couldn't find any town meeting vote that had the roads accepted, and they're old roads. They're actually called pre-1846 roads, so.
Even new estate though?
Yeah, 'cause that,
Yeah.
you go back
How's
to the
that
old
possible?
maps of town, New Estate Road is on there.
So it must have just
Well,
been
it used to be
some-
Estate Road, and then it was New Estate, and then they.
It must have been a
moved it.
trail, and then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
trail turned into.
Yeah,
Cow path.
Wow.
But we do need to get these acceptances in, you know, formalized so that we can do the needed roadway repairs that we've got planned.
How many other roads do we have like this? And if we-
Jimmy and Tom are going through the list now, so we're gonna identify them all, approve them in the next few months.
Yeah, just get them all voted in the spring, so we don't have to go through this every time we're gonna rebuild.
Yep.
So we have private roads that we plow, that we had all those issues with, and now we have these roads that exist that we don't even have, we have never even accepted.
I mean, they've been here since Littleton's been here.
Yeah, that's
Does that
interesting.
make sense to add the other roads?
Yeah, get them all done.
Well, that's what
Just-
they're doing
Yeah,
the
I think
research
they're
now.
trying to do that, but-
you gotta go through 150 years worth
Yeah,
of
that's,
meeting votes to
it's,
see.
I'm
you
sure
know.
it's a
Get
nightmare.
that for spring town meeting, at least as a housekeeping article, we could get all that done. But for these two roads, Jim needs to get going on repairing them and getting the state grant, so I
Yeah.
think it makes sense to go forward with these two.
So they will have the list for the spring, the others.
Okay, that-
So the warrant is open, you know, if there are other articles that, you know, come up for discussion. Again, none of these have been inserted, they're just items that are out there. All right.
Good.
Can you just go to my next memo, the free cash certification? So I submitted earlier this year, the planets were all in alignment, and I was able to get everything wrapped up. The state did certify the undesignated fund balance at just over 5.8 million, which is an increase over the prior year. So which is, you know, a good sign of financial health for the town. What we used last year on the capital plan, we replenished and then some. And going through this, the bulk of it came from, actually, it was about even between unexpended appropriations and revenues that were not programmed. We had some tax title, you know, collections that came in that bumped up the real estate. Becky did a fantastic job at real estate collections this year. It was like 100% collected at the end of the year. So usually, you know, you budget for, you know, the full amount, and then you have the abatement amount that you're going to think that you're not going to collect. We collected everything that we had programmed, so it was just a really good year. I don't know.
Can you give us some example of quote unexpended appropriations? I mean, people aren't
Sure.
spending the money they're asking for.
Yeah, the fire department had done a very good job at controlling the overtime. This was, they used that fifth person, they have that swing person that would come in and fill in for shifts, but they weren't really sure how it was going to work, and this is the first kind of full cycle that they had it. So they had a significant amount of funding turned back from overtime. And within probably about, I want to say 60,000 maybe total that they left on the table. Jimmy Clyde had a large amount turned back. He has been shorthanded. He's had people, you know, out without being paid and some being paid from short-term disability, so there were savings in his budget. He turned back quite a bit of funding.
Okay, now, in Jim's case, those are positions that
Will be filled.
should be
Yes.
filled, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's
So it's a
something that we shouldn't
one-year
expect to
kind of-
go, so it's a one-time
Yeah.
event.
Yeah. We also had some assessments that were estimated by the state to be higher than they actually came in on. I think the charter school was less than they had told me originally. So that created some savings. Trying to think of the accounts.
Okay.
But the reserve fund, you know, kicked back another, you know, 50,000 plus in funding.
Schools spent it to the penny?
Absolutely.
No surprise.
But that's, you know, that we expect that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, so, I mean, overall, it was a very healthy year. It made it much easier for me to close, it was.
How about health insurance? Where'd that come in?
It came in a couple $100,000 less, which, you know, it sounds like it's a lot of money. It's only like, you know, when you're looking at family plans at, you know, 20,000.
What is the health insurance budget? Like, what did we budget last year for it?
I think it was
roughly?
about $4 million for the health insurance.
How much of that would you say was the schools? How much is?
About 65-70%.
Yeah, which is
Easy.
about right, yeah.
Easy. But yes, we did not have as much enrollment, you know, spikes that we had budgeted for, so that went back to free cash.
Right. Okay, good to know. Oh, that actually brings something up. With this new teacher's contract, did they negotiate any lower rates as far as what the town's portion of health insurance, like, did they ever change that? Like, because every school district I have moved around in, it seems like anytime a new employee comes on, instead of at 75%, now it's 70, and then it's 65, and has the schools done any of that?
No, we're at a 70-30 split, and we have been since I've been here. I think they switched that about 10 years ago, which is a pretty good
Yeah, that's, yeah,
ratio.
right.
For retirees, we did switch, if you were hired, I think after 2010, your split in retirement is 50-50. It used to be 70-30 also.
Yeah,
So,
some districts, I think Wayland was 63%, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
we did do that in 2010 by
Okay.
policy vote. But that was the last time we really changed any of the contributions.
Interesting.
Let's see. So if I take the free cash figure that we have certified, I've run it through the policy that we have in place now. So in the policy, it states that 2.5% of the operating budget has to stay in the free cash pool just to mitigate 9C cuts,
Right.
bad collections. It's a hedge against negative free cash, because you can have negative free cash. So it's just good fiscal policy to have that buffer in there. So that's the minimum amount that you have to have in. So that's just over $1 million. Then we need to look at what do I need to do for a stabilization fund transfer to keep us at our 5% minimum of the operating budget.
Right.
So we need another $42,000 appropriation for that. We typically spend the 2% that we're allowed on capital, which would be $820,000. And then we fund capital stabilization at a minimum of 1% of whatever we spend on capital. So I put 20,000 in there as an estimate. So if I take those figures out, my adjusted balance would be just shy of 3.9 million. That balance is looked at heavily when we looked at our bond rating. They cited it, the Standard & Poor's cited it heavily in their analyst comments. They also stated, drawdowns of free cash without plans to replenish it would be looked at negatively, going forward.
Would it look better if we funded stabilization more than 5%? Is that a good thing to have? Or is
Absolutely.
5% like the benchmark and we just expect 5% and then anything above that is?
You can go above the policy. The policy just defines the minimums.
Mhm.
So it's absolutely on the table to discuss, putting more into it. The bond rating companies look at our stabilization account and our free cash as reserves combined.
So it
it's-
wouldn't matter however
Yeah.
you shifted it around, it's just still the same number.
Right. The difference is when it goes into stabilization, it's a 2/3 vote in and a 2/3 vote out.
Right, so it's a lot harder, right, to use that money,
Right.
right.
Free cash is a majority vote.
Yep, yep.
So it's a little bit, I think it's more secure in stabilization than it
definitely.
is in free cash,
Yeah.
but the rating companies look at both of them as the same. So I copied the policy as it stands right now, just to kind of give you the template on it, but based on the policy, we have to keep that million in there. The 42,000 will go out, the 820 will be available for capital, whether it's spent or not, it's available, so I take it off the table. So then I've had the question, well, what would we have to do if we wanted to spend more? If we wanted to spend more of that remaining balance? In order to do that, under the policy, you need to meet the minimum threshold now of 5%. So you gotta have 5%. You're not gonna just spend it down to spend it down. So in
You
order
have a
to,
minimum of 5% left over?
you need to keep a minimum of 5% as undesignated fund balance, just loose in the general
Okay.
fund.
So the top number keeps us at 2.5, but to spend beyond this, we have to get up to 5%, and then beyond that, we can spend.
Right. So in order to get to the 5%, that would be just over 2 million, 2,076,000.
Yep.
So if you take that out, then the amount remaining above the benchmark would be 2.8 million. So
Okay.
again, under the policy, just going up to those steps, in priority order, you could take up to 10% of that excess balance, or the 2.8 million, so 285,000.
Right.
You could appropriate that to OPEB, and you could do an additional 10% for other reserves, like capital stabilization, regular stabilization, something else.
So that 285 is on top of the 820,000 we'd already put aside for capital?
Correct. You could. We haven't done this in the past, but it is,
So how do we get to like 1.3 million, 1.4 million that we usually have to fund capital in the past? How do we get?
the other part is inside the levy limit from retired debt service. So as
Oh,
debt
okay,
service
the
comes
debt
off.
that's rolling off, yep.
Figure
Okay.
out it.
Yep, okay, I get it.
So this is just one component of it.
Yep.
So further appropriations, you could do further drawdowns for other items. It is under the policy for capital. However, you want to be mindful of the effect on the town's bond rating. So I've been gathering some information from other communities that have AAA ratings and what their reserves are to include undesignated and stabilization. I'm trying to put that together in some type of meaningful report for your next meeting. But, just to see if there's some percentages that seem to make sense before anything else is drawn down. And I would kind of restate again that the bond rating, I know some people say, well, it's great to have a great bond rating, but what does it really do? The last debt issuance for the water department saved us about $500,000
really- yeah.
because of the difference in our bond rating.
Yeah, it is.
And the water department, they need those savings.
Yeah.
And that's, goes back to all the taxpayers too, because they're the ones.
It goes back to the
the
rate.
rates, right?
I don't know how anyone could say, what does the bond rating do? It's huge. What do you mean, what does it do?
But, So that's kind of, where we are now, and I did provide a copy of the balance sheet to show you. That's a lot of data, but,
That's,
So, yeah, go ahead.
Bonnie just outlined us, some of these formal financial policies. Are
Right.
these the same ones?
Yes,
that you
exactly,
see?
exactly.
Right.
She looked exactly out of our
This is
policy.
a piece of
Yeah.
the total policy that.
cut and paste.
So it's really important, because it lays, like I said, this kind of stuff is very clear on.
I was wondering if we were going to review one policy, or is this a second?
Oh, yeah, no, this is part of that.
This is all.
Yeah, yeah.
Good answer for a change, huh?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So Bonnie, if, after you take these monies out, there's this money left that we can't appropriate or not, and so on. If the answer is not, it just basically stays.
It stays in the undesignated fund
Fund
balance.
balance.
And
It
it
rolls
sits
over
as a
to the next year.
reserve, so that
Right.
if there is a problem,
Right,
Yeah.
if there's a major infrastructure issue, we
Right.
can deal with it.
okay.
Um,
With a vote to
Right.
appropriate it and so on, okay. Okay, so it's just another reserve, it's just completely free reserve at that point as opposed to designated for one particular purpose or not. So this would be another opportunity if your new, I forget the terms here already again. Your excluded debt stabilization fund, that would be another opportunity, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, which would obviously put that money, that unused money to good use, would be obviously paying down debt and saving money, so.
Yeah, if you want to, I think, we want to determine what's a good level of reserves to maintain our bond rating. And I think, beyond that, then, that's,
Right.
And I think that's part of the discussion on the total capital requirement for the town. I mean, like I talked about last time, was, we have the facilities
Yeah,
plan.
right.
We're not funding it to the level that was recommended, whether the recommendation is truly sound or not, I don't know. Defer to PMBC on that. Roads, we have a 10-year road plan, which at best is falling behind. We're spending to that plan, but our roads aren't getting any better. So I think that, that needs to be sort of fleshed out.
Yeah.
And then there's the ever-present OPEB. I don't know what we do with that, or,
Yeah.
whether we choose to do more or just sort of hold our breath like everybody else is holding their breath or not. And then overlay that with fields that pop up, a fire station or a library or whatever the next one is, I don't know. But over the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to be a pretty big nut. So I really think that, between us and the selectmen, we ought to request that PMBC take a really hard look at the facilities plan and how much they recommend we should be spending. And highways, what Jimmy and his people really think we should be spending on highways before we go signing up for another big capital project. And put that all in one bucket and say, okay, this is what we've got for money, and these are the needs of the town, of the infrastructure of the town. What are we going to do to answer both of those?
Yeah, the needs assessment that PMBC, excuse me, had done, took out all the needs for 20 years. And it was fairly comprehensive. There were some items that in there that you might say were maintenance items as opposed to capital projects. But by and large, they're all capital projects, replacements.
But at the same time, we didn't do all the buildings.
No.
So
That's right.
And whether, if we build or renovate / build a new fire station, well, then that building has to be put into the plan.
Correct.
And then whatever other buildings weren't included.
Cemetery.
So, whatever, yeah, but, I just think we really we've got a really good opportunity to look at the whole and decide as a town how much we want to spend on maintaining our infrastructure. And we have we're in a decent financial position right now, where it took us a long time to get from where we were in 2004, 2005. And we basically passed a number of overrides, at least one operational override in that time frame, right? And capital exclusions.
For years.
Year after year.
Yeah.
I don't know what it adds up to, but it's got to be well over $1 million of capital exclusions, which in effect was an override.
Right.
So we just don't want to fall back to that without really thinking about what we're doing or not doing, that's all.
Yeah.
When it comes this year to OPEB funding, Bonnie, we've had offline discussions about, we're not in a position to 100% fund our requirement per year at OPEB. But we've discussed offline making sure that henceforth, all new employees get 100% funded. Is that just something that your office can do? Is that something the town has to?
When we have the actuarials come out next year, we just did it last year, we just had them come out and do all of the new calculations. They don't come out this year, they come out again next year, and we'll incorporate that as part of the scope of services, identifying what amounts we would need to fund. Otherwise, we'd have to have another procurement for that. I mean, it would be a whole nother.
Yeah, but how do we formalize that? Does that become part of the financial guidelines?
I think it should be part of the financial guidelines,
Yeah.
yes.
So we don't keep digging the hole deeper.
Right, but we're going to get those numbers regardless, just so that people know what they are.
Right.
Yeah, Fred's right. Let's make sure that since we've taken on the facilities capital finally, and you guys are running it, that we are in fact putting enough money in there to make it worthwhile. And I don't know if we're funding the roadways as much as we should, or
I can
maybe
go
we're
through all
funding
that
it
now if you want.
as much as Jimmy can do. I don't know.
If you wouldn't mind going through this, I'll try and be brief, but.
So in the Bonnie
I don't
packet,
want to hammer you, but.
colored spreadsheet.
Yes, this is the group of spreadsheets. Now, I'm still working on this, and I've already identified some changes that I want to make, but I think the information is really useful and it's interesting. This identifies just the items that everybody's been talking about as far as larger, unfunded obligations, capital, fire station, OPEB, roadway, and puts them all together into one funding area, because typically we fund this through a combination of your retired debt service, appropriations within the levy limit, undesignated fund balance. We look at them all kind of similarly. So in the first section, unfunded request estimates. I have a 10-year capital plan in place right now, so I have figures going out 10 years. They do change every year, but I know right now what they should be. I know what the PMBC facility maintenance plan requests are. We have those for the next 20 years. So these figures came from that. The roadway plan request. Jimmy Clyde's indicated that he needs $3 million a year to do the roads on a schedule that would maintain them over their constructed lifespan. We don't spend $3 million, but he's saying $3 million would get him in a reasonable schedule.
I'm sorry, Bonnie, the roadway plan request here is 2.4, 2.4, 2.5.
Right. And part of it comes from Chapter 90. So I
Okay,
called that out.
so that adds up to the 3.
Right,
Okay.
with the Chapter 90.
Okay, and just again, one line above, PMBC facility maintenance plan, 15 is the 453 that we approved.
It was the 453 that was approved. And then if you look at the rollover from the previous year, that $1 million,
Yeah,
that was the previous 2 years that we didn't address.
okay, so that's gets us up to the 1.2. And then it drops to 60,000?
Yeah, what,
In 17, there was just a few items identified in that 1 year.
Okay.
Just happened.
Okay, but then
It's
it
just the way
jumps
that
back up to
plan-
$1 million, okay, all right, so,
Yep.
Okay, that's just,
I just took it exactly for what it was, but if you average it out, it's about $1,123,000 a year that you need to spend each year. OPEB, this is based on the last report that we did. This is the actual amount that we should be funding it for fiscal 15.
And that would make us 100%.
That would keep us on the schedule, yeah. So the total, again, with the rollover from the previous year's unfunded plans from the facility study, is 10.8 million. So that's what we should, you know, in a perfect world, that's what you would fund. So then you go down to look at the available funds. Where do the monies come from that we use for these? There's a debt service reduction of $551,000 from 15 that we used. We used $872,000 from undesignated fund balance. We have $688,000 for a roadway that's appropriated within the levy limit that we worked into the operating budget. We have $665,000 for OPEB that we worked inside the levy limit. And other available revenues, these will change annually, but we have excess snow and ice monies that could be utilized this year if we choose to. So available funds is just over $3 million. So then if you go down to the next section and you look at what we actually appropriated or anticipate on appropriating, you'll see what we spent. So on the department, the regular capital plan, or the traditional capital plan that we've had in the past, was $880,000 this year. And then we did the PMBC facility maintenance plan for $529,000. The difference from above, $453 was what was identified for that fiscal year in the plan, but we spent $529. We added a little bit more for a few other items. Roadway plan was $688. OPEB was funded at $665, and then an amount to capital stabilization. So we spent $2,777,000 on these items.
In the roadway plan, is that just Chapter 90 money? What is it?
No, it's an appropriation. We combine it with Chapter 90.
Okay.
Chapter 90 is separate.
It's that $1 million rollover thing we were doing.
Yep.
So based on that, for fiscal 15, because we now know where the snow and ice, deficit landed, there's $225,000 available in the fall to appropriate for something. If you go to the next page, what I did is just kind of broke it out by section. So for the regular traditional capital plan, you can see that about 56% of it was unfunded, or $1.1 million. It's a big number. For the PMBC facility maintenance plan, the 1 year amount, this doesn't include the rollover, it was funded at about $76,000 more than the amount identified in that fiscal year as a need. The roadway plan is unfunded by about 71%, because again, Jimmy estimates that he needs about $3 million to do proper roadway maintenance. OPEB was unfunded by about 85%, so we're really behind on that one. And then I did add the fire station debt service as part of that calculation, just to show. In the outward years, I did not assume any additional amounts appropriated to regular capital because I had no policy statement on it. I did not appropriate any additional amounts to the PMBC funding because, again, there's no policy statement. We pay. It makes sense. We paid for the study. We should be funding it. But I don't have a policy decision by the board to do that. So I left them to keep the amounts available. I also put in capital stabilization and excluded debt stabilization, just with some nominal amounts, just to get it on the table for looking at. So if you go to the next page, capital equipment and small facility, the first chart. I'm gonna change this chart a little bit. It doesn't include the carryover amounts, so I want to show with the carryover what it really is. It's just going to push the unfunded amount higher, but it shows at least the annual amount, the requested versus the actual. So you can see it's not too bad in the outward years, but this portion of the capital plan changes very much in a 3-year period. Capital plan is hard to project out, past 5 years because people just
they're
taking
all
a
over the
guess at
place.
equipment
Yeah.
that fire trucks and ladder
well,
trucks.
this is just the bolus that we just keep rolling forward, right?
Usually a facilities manager would handle a lot of that stuff too. I know that Chelmsford did that with all the vehicles and all that sort of stuff. He covered everything.
Yeah, that would be marvelous.
Make your life a whole lot easier, I'm sure.
So the next one is for the PMBC facility maintenance plan, and you can see there's a lot of spikes in here. But it, generally, in the annual increments, it's not funded enough. We need to be putting at least, $1 million a year aside based on the study, and we're really not. And again, I have no policy decision to do anything other than that at this point. The roadway improvement plan, we do have some policy on that. In 2008, the board voted that when we implemented this plan, that we were going to increase the appropriations by at least 1% every year, just to keep it going up. It's not a lot of money, but it gets it a programmed increase that I can go forward with. But again, generally, you need $3 million to do.
Yeah, well, and what's he able to do with 688,000? I mean,
It takes a couple of years to
Couple
do the big
driveways.
roads. I want to caution in that it's been a success compared to what it was before, which was,
Absolutely,
You got,
there's
100
no,
or
no
200,000.
slam whatsoever on Jim or the
Yeah.
highway department.
Right.
The question I trying to raise is, are we giving him enough money to do it? And
Well, you just look at that chart, that tells you the
Yeah.
story right
Yeah.
there.
so I just, and, the answer that, well, he can't do anymore, that's not the right answer. He can't do anymore because he doesn't have the resources to do more. If we need the roads to be improved, I don't know, maybe part of any new large development is, some crazy big connection fee for the water department or the electric department or the roads. And I know Sam Park is paying a lot down there around.
Yeah, he's
495
saying his prayers about
19.
Market Basket, I'm sure, too. He's probably over
Nice
there.
empty market basket.
He's over, they come to a deal with that establishment is,
and then the next one is OPEB, and you can see we're pretty well pretty behind on that one. They're looking at, 4.4 million is what we should be funding this year, and we're funding 665,000, so there's a $3.7 million delta.
so everyone's getting beat up
We do
on
have-
that.
We do have a policy decision on this also, in that it's in the financial policies too, that the amount must be increased annually by at least 10%. So we do have something in there, but it might need to be revamped a little. And then the next one, the fire station. I did not include this as an inside the levy limit item because we have conflicting votes. It's not finalized yet. The Board of Selectmen voted 3-2 to recommend funding inside the levy, and the Finance Committee voted 5-0 to fund as a debt exclusion. So still more work to be done on that. But for
Yeah.
right now, in these calculations, it's not funded as inside the levy.
It's still in the air, or what?
It's still in the air at this point. The last page, I tried to kind of tie this together, and I'm going to graph this out, but I think it's probably the most beneficial. In the funded uses section, I put my comments, assumes no increases over 15 levels because I don't have a policy vote. PMBC facility maintenance assumes no increase over 15. Again, no policy vote. I referenced the 1% and the 10% increases on roadway and OPEB respectively. The fire station funding paid inside the levy, I have no amounts in here yet because those votes have not happened. I do have the small amounts, for excluded debt stabilization and capital stabilization based on the capital stabilization policy and a proposed policy for the excluded debt also. So you can see it's referenced as a surplus of $225,000 starting in 15, and then next year, because of changes in debt service, it would be an increase of $357,000. Again, assuming no increases in regular capital or facilities maintenance. So if you kept those at the same level, you'd have, say next year, $357,000 more that you could spend on any of this menu, but it's a menu. So you could fund the facilities maintenance plan at the cost of OPEB, or, it's everything, you can do anything you want, it's just at the cost of something else. So
It's the real world, that's how it works.
it does kind of identify, and you look, going out into fiscal '20 with a full debt service for the fire station, would be placed, that's 600,000. You know, there's 960 that you could spend in that fiscal year because we've retired the high school debt
Right.
and everything's come off. Do you want to spend it all on the fire station and nothing on OPEB, or, again, it's just, it's a menu. It's a choice that needs to be done by the policymakers, and I have my own opinion, but it's not my policy.
When is that happening again? When's the high school debt coming off? It was like,
Fiscal 20 is the first year that
20,
I
okay.
have room to do everything. Do something.
fiscal 20.
So I will try to put this into a visual that, you know, kind of identifies the menu approach that you have in those years. Again, these are some very conservative assumptions on expenditures for capital. I mean, the
Right.
facilities plan, it's $1 million a year, and I have it at $500,000 a year.
Right.
So you know, once we secure what the goals are, I think this will get updated, and then we'll see.
Right, no, that's why I think it has to be an all-encompassing discussion. And,
This is great.
Yeah.
We appreciate you putting this together relatively quickly for us.
So is this what, in some format, is this basically what you're planning to present to the selectmen on the 8th?
Yes.
Okay, and we're posted for a meeting, not that there's any votes to be taken, but we're posted to be there
Along with the school committee.
along with the school committee, okay?
And which one's that? Is that the coming up? The
Yep, the 8th.
8th? Okay.
The
Oh,
next
school
regular.
committee's coming too?
Yep, they're coming at 7:15, and then you're on at 7:30 for half an hour.
It's at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Oh,
Monday night,
just
Monday.
just like budget stuff is why the school committee's there, just the,
They're coming for a joint appointment. They have the vacancy.
Right, because
Yeah.
Paul.
oh, okay.
Paul's-
Okay, yeah, I just didn't.
So it just,
know what-
it's good timing. They're
Yeah,
gonna be
okay.
doing
Didn't know what was going on.
So obviously, hopefully Steve will be there, but is PMBC invited to that as well, or no?
I don't
at
think
this
they're
point?
on for that meeting. That meeting is jam-packed, so I don't know that he was nervous about doing a half an hour for,
Okay, so basically you'll present,
I've already given this in draft format to Keith, and he
okay.
made a
great.
couple of suggestions
Sure.
for stuff too, and he's great with it. He thinks
Okay.
It's a great idea.
Good job, Bonnie.
It's your input.
This is great. There's going to be some really good discussions, productive discussions, and
This is a keeper.
needs to happen, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
On this joint meeting, just for my, do I have to post our meeting, or does that happen all together with yours? Do I have to post it separately? How does that work?
Technically, you're supposed to
You have
post
to post
another
it,
yeah.
meeting, but
Okay, I
I'm happy to post it for you, just to
Okay.
put it in there.
Just want to make sure I don't miss something I need to do.
And normally in those meetings, the only topic is whatever the topic is on
Right, same topic.
agenda, unless we want to spin off and have more of a
Right.
meeting somewhere.
Okay. No, we have one the next night.
And
so if you
typically
can
for
do-
the minutes, what we'll do is take, Jennifer's minutes from the meeting for
Mhm.
your section and cut and paste them.
And a lot of those meetings, the joint meetings are the ones that we never got minutes, like, posted, because it was, yeah, it was kind of like unknown, do we post, not post?
Wow.
Good.
Were there any surprises here from you? Were you surprised at some of these numbers, or did they come out pretty much you
I
thought?
was surprised at the, when you look at the last page with the cumulative unfunded totals, $61 million in fiscal '22 unfunded, based on, just the little scenario that I have going here. Yeah, it was kind of shocking.
And the OPEB numbers, what does that get done, every 3 years, 2 years, or what?
Every two.
Every 2?
Yeah.
So, next year, when do we?
Next, we'll have.
Okay.
Oh, it's only money.
Well,
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
You guys get to pick 'em.
But
But I
it's
think
better
that-
to be ahead of it and thinking ahead and what you're going to do with it, rather than being behind the 8 ball and saying,
Right.
how do we make this work, right? So,
Right.
Well, I mean, in 5 years, if you're in a situation where the roads have just, you've had a couple of bad years, and now you need to really invest in the roads,
You have to
You're gonna-
fund $15 million or
Right.
something. That's my fear. is that we're gonna get
OPEB
to
is
the point
is
we
the
just
big
can't do
nut
it.
in that
Right.
61 million, though.
Yeah.
Right, and we've made it, I thought we were almost talking about before, if we retain that 10% increase. If we get too aggressive with it, it may not be in our best
That's
interest.
absolutely right. It's definitely a game, and we don't know yet.
OPEB's a real
Right.
crapshoot.
So even though that unfunded is large, we're actually trying to manage, the roads were one issue that looked like it kicked in a large amount, but that OPEB is the driver there. And it wasn't that it was ignored.
Yeah.
I mean, we're actually
Well, but-
being tactical and
but if-
strategic.
Yeah, but if you look at what we have funded, it basically came out of increases that could have gone to other
Right.
programs.
Or whatever, right?
So whatever we funded came out of what we had to fund other programs. So there was a balancing act. You know, all of a sudden they come up with an extra 400,000 out of your budget every year it's not an easy task to do, especially the first couple of years. I mean, you're really struggling to make ends meet. And then once, 2.5 catches up and new growth catches up, then it becomes a little easier to swallow.
We
But
should probably pick a point in time, though, where we reinvestigate, we relook at this.
oh, no, absolutely.
You know, the current 10%, puts us in an incredible hole. So at some point.
Sure.
to-
Well, it's the other discussion we were having earlier, when they come in and do the, next year, when they come back in and do the actuary, because that's an opportunity to talk, what Alan brought up, this idea of every time you hire a new employee, now you start funding them to full value. So you're putting more than 10% in, and you're just keeping yourself from getting further in the hole as you go forward. So there's
Stop
things we
bleeding.
can do like that, which
Stops
is,
the bleeding.
it stops the
Right.
bleeding, without,
Right. What happens if an employee leaves? Right, they go on another community, like they work in Littleton and then they move to Westford.
Okay.
As far as funding the OPEB, do you,
Well, we're still on the hook for the number of years that they were with us.
Okay, so you
They
just go-
retire
okay,
with
okay.
insurance eligibility.
Okay, so you
And
just-
they go to Westford for 10 years, and they've been here for 10 years. Westford's gonna bill me for the 10 years that
Yeah.
I own the employee, and I have to pay them.
so every year it's just a yearly amount, it's not, okay.
Now, there's no getting away from it.
No, they
No,
find
there's
it.
no, there's definitely no getting away from
I
it.
mean, we find them too, if we have employees come from other communities, we bill them.
Yeah,
but I think the maintenance is key too, because I think that back in the years when we were doing the high school inside the levy, and we did that, but then a lot of other stuff suffered, and I think a lot of the maintenance, and we all know in our own places
We
that,
died.
it just costs you down the road more, and I just really don't want to, we want to be careful and prudent, and nobody wants taxes to go up, but we got to do the long-term, what's the right thing, and how to spend the money, it's just,
All this stuff gets approved by the town
Right.
people.
yeah.
And they have to hear us when we say there is no free lunch. You can say, okay, well, put that under the levy, that way my taxes won't go up, but your services will certainly go down because we won't be able to do something else. A lot of something else, so.
Well, and Bonnie's also got some report, I think she shared it one time when she was here too recently, where, all those years, we didn't do the high school outside, but we were doing outside, we were doing the, the highway department trucks and all that other stuff, we were voting at town meeting, should we buy this truck or that truck? And it's like,
We were buying, it got to the point that there's a couple of years when we bought used trucks, just so that we'd have something that rolled.
Donovan's bought us police cars, right? So, anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And Jimmy Clyde is still rehabbing 30-year-old trucks.
I know, he's great. I mean, he so spends the money as if it were his own. I mean, it's just, we are so fortunate to have him and other, I mean, even, the fire, I mean, I think your message about some of the departments that didn't spend it, giving it back, I mean, it's-
Yeah.
we all need, people need to understand that their money is really being treated
Well,
very
we didn't
carefully
have the
for
free
this
cash
town.
that we have, people weren't,
Right.
doing the tournaments.
So, all right. Excellent. Anything else on your list for us? Okay, well, we went through all other items before you got down here, so I guess we're all set, unless somebody else has something else they want to talk about tonight? Going once, going twice? Take a motion?
We adjourn?
Next meeting?
We joint meeting on the 8th, or what, are we gonna meet again before that?
No, because I said we're not going to do
Yeah,
that
we're
one
not
before
gonna do the
then.
2nd, so we're gonna meet on the 8th then, right?
Right. And then our meeting will be on the 16th.
Yep.
So September 3rd is no, right?
Not right, I'm not going to do that, we're not going to do that one, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll second the motion, I guess.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good night. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Good job.